Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dad and Daughter Reads, a book club podcast. This is episode 1, where we'll be diving into Blood over Brighthaven, covering chapters 1 through 6. I'm James, better known here as Dad, and joining me as always is my brilliant co-host, my daughter Miranda, calling in from the heart of the Big Apple. Miranda, are you ready to kick off our very first book discussion?
Yes, let's do it. Let's start off by talking about what we read in 2024, shall we?
Sure.
So I read 16 books in 2024, and majority of my reading time was spent in the spring and summer. I feel like that's usually when I get on my kick. I'm going to talk about my top 3 faves, which were Midnight Library by Matt Haig, Circe by Madeline Miller, who also wrote the popular Song of Achilles, which I also read in 2024, but I think Circe is way, 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 way better personally. And my favorite book I read this year was The Wager by David Grann, which tells the story of the real-life history of a shipwreck and the castaways from the ship The Wager. It's an English ship. And it's nonfiction, but it was written in a way that made it feel like an epic novel, which is why I liked it so much. And I totally recommend, especially if you like high seas drama, which I do. I'm a big high sea pirate girl. So I think the biggest reason why I didn't read more, which I feel like a lot of you people are probably like, 16 books, that's nothing. But I really think it's because I spent a big chunk of the summer, 2 weeks. That's like a big chunk for me to read a book. I was reading Wise Man's Fear, which is the second book of the Kingkiller Chronicle, which I big time regret because it was 1,100 pages of male fantasy. And it was incredibly disappointing because the first one, Name of the Wind, is really good. But Patrick Rothfuss, the author, just got lost in the second one, and the way he portrays female characters is pretty terrible. And he takes so much time to describe situations and like male yearning while actively skipping over stories that could have been way more interesting. Like there's literally a part in the book where the main character who's telling the story is like, and then I went on this sea adventure and I got robbed and I lost all my treasures at the bottom of the ocean, but I'm just going to skip all that because I don't feel like talking about it, which was crazy. Like, why actively describe some cool thing that happened and then you're not going to talk about it? But anyway, a lot of people recommend Name of the Wind to read when they're just getting into fantasy. And I agree because that book is great. But do yourself a favor, skip the second one. The third and final one is probably never coming out anyway, so don't waste your time. To start off 2025, I am reading The Guest by Emma Cline. It's been on my list for a while. And once I finish that, I'm going to read The Witches of El Paso by Louis Jaramillo, which I picked up both of those books at the airport last week.
Yes, I agree with you on the Kingkiller Chronicles. Name of the Wind was really good. And then the second one, Wise Man's Fear, was just wasn't it. And then, like you said, who knows when the third one's going to come out. As for me, I was too busy in the first half of the year to even think about reading. And I got started back up in July and I read 20 books in the second half of 2024. And also, I'd like to say that my 2024 reading was not diverse at all. And for that, I apologize. And it's funny because I went back and looked at my 2023 reading, and 50% of that was all marginalized authors. But this past year, I think I was too caught up in trying to finish 2 pretty big series, which were like a total of 13 books right there out of the 20, starting with Red Rising by Pierce Brown, which you've read as well. And we both love that series. Yes, it's a great series. I think my favorite book in there, it's hard to pick between Golden Sun and Lightbringer. I can't decide which one I like better. I think you like Dark Age is your favorite, maybe?
No, I love Golden Sun. Golden Sun is my favorite.
Oh, okay, yeah. Golden Sun, that's the one that has all the twists.
All the twists.
And it will definitely get you.
The epic fight scenes and stuff, just incredible.
Right. So yeah, other than that, I read It during the month of October because that is also like Wise Man's Fear, an 1,100 page book. And it's Stephen King, who loves to describe every little nook and cranny of everything. So I don't know if you've read much Stephen King, but his books are just insane. I mean, he's a good writer. The words he uses are just normal words. It's nothing crazy. It's just easy to read, but it's just a lot. It's a lot. And from there, I read 3 nonfiction books by Thomas C. Foster, How to Read Literature Like a Professor, How to Read Novels Like a Professor, and How to Read Nonfiction Like a Professor. Those were really good. They give you some insight on what you're reading and really think about what you're reading instead of just blowing it all off. And I mean, yes, people like to read for fun, and there's nothing wrong with that, but at least try to understand what the author's saying. Usually there's always some kind of hidden meaning in there that they're talking about. And then I finished off the year reading all 7 books of the Dungeon Crawler Carl series by Matt Dinniman. That is a great series. It's a lot of fun, but I don't think it's for everyone. If you're not much of a gamer, because it's a kind of new anyway, it hasn't been around that long, new genre called lit RPG. So if you're not much of a gamer, you probably aren't going to like it because the characters, when they're in the dungeon, they have like a HUD. It's kind of like a mix of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and World of Warcraft. It's very funny. There's lots of humor in it, lots of action, but there is some commentary on social media and reality TV. So there is stuff to think about in there. In the later part of the series, Carl's kind of leading all of the people in the dungeon. Some of his ideas get people killed, so it's things he has to think about and deal with. So there's definitely character development in the book, and I really love that series. It's great. I can't wait for the next one. But who knows when that's going to be, because book 7 just came out like November, I think. And currently I'm reading the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb. And I have to say that book is really good. And actually I finished the first book already last night. And that one's Assassin's Apprentice. So Robin Hobb, she's been around writing books for a long time. Assassin's Apprentice came out in 1995. This is actually part of a bigger series called The Realm of the Elderlings, which is 16 books. I'm not reading the entire series right now. I'm just going to stick to the first trilogy for now, and then we'll see what happens after that. But I heard the second trilogy is even better than the first. In this book, though, there's like almost no action. There's some action, but there's just a lot of intrigue, especially court intrigue dealing with the king, the princes, and the royal bastard, which I think I've been called that before. Or maybe that was royal pain in the ass. I don't know. It's just a really good book. It's good. I couldn't put it down. I read it in 3 days. That's pretty quick for me. I'm also listening to Being Henry by Henry Winkler. I don't know if you are familiar with who Henry Winkler is. Maybe.
Name sounds familiar.
Oh my God. He's the Fonz from Happy Days.
Right.
So Happy Days was a big deal in the 70s, early 80s, until they jumped the shark, that's where that phrase comes from, by the way.
I think you've told me that.
Yeah, in the show, at one point, the Fonz jumps a pool of sharks in his motorcycle, and everyone thinks that that's when the show went downhill. And that's where the phrase jump the shark comes from. So you learned something today.
Thanks, Dad.
All right, now let's dive into our next segment, which is something I like to call the social media book buzz. So what's been going on with social media lately? So, it's the end of the year. So most people are, putting up their, what I read in top 10 or whatever of 2024 and their 2025 TBR. We'll be going over our 2025 TBR in the next episode. But there was a little bit of drama out there last week with Fable. If you're not familiar with Fable, what it is an app where you can track what you read, but it also has some book clubs on there. It's probably the best app for book clubs. So what happened with them is they do a yearly wrap up of what you've read, and it's produced using AI, generative AI. Someone got one. Here, I'll read it here. It's from Tiana's Lit Talk on Twitter, I believe. I typically enjoy my reader summaries from Fable, but this particular one is not sitting well with me. And it said, Soulful Explorer, your journey dives deep into the heart of Black narratives and transformative tales, leaving mainstream stories gasping for air. Don't forget to surface for the occasional white author, okay? Wow. Not good. Of course, they made a video on TikTok and Instagram apologizing and talking about how they generate these wrap-ups using AI. And they said they were deeply sorry for the harm in the community that this caused. They only pass in the publisher summary of the books you've read. They have some safeguards to avoid some topics and offensive language. And their plans going forward are going to add a disclosure that it's AI generated. You can opt out of the summary. Then they're going to remove some of the playfulness, snarkiness of the AI model, model. Apparently, they have that built in where it's a little snarky. So they think that's what caused this offensive language that happened here. And then they're going to add a thumbs up and a thumbs down button for reader summaries to help train the model. So they've since come out with a second video where they said they're immediately going to remove the reader summary from the stats feature, Shelfie, whatever Shelfie is, I'm not sure, and the 2024 reader summary. Those are some of, but not all, of their AI generated features. So that's a good start, I guess, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, they have to come out with some kind of apology. That's normal, right? Corporations, when they mess up, they put out an apology. But here's the thing that bothers me most. So I went and looked in the comments section of that very first video. And what I saw was there were some comments in there that saying, like, it's okay. Thank you for owning it. Love your authenticity and transparency. What an amazing response. I love Fable even more. AI is tricky. So when I looked at these folks making these sorts of comments, can you guess what they all had in common? They were all white women. So, you know, the problem was it created a racist remark. And from one white person to all you white women out there that were saying those comments, racism does not affect you. This is not about you at all. It is not your place to reject or accept the apology from Fable. You can be mad about the AI, that's fine, but now they've gone and removed all the AI. But it's definitely not your place to accept this apology. What do you think about that?
I mean, period. Yeah. I think I am half a white woman, and I definitely always feel like, and me and my friends talk about this all the time, because all of my friends or most of my friends are queer or BIPOC of some sort, and we're always very much like, yes, white women, they need to learn how to talk less and listen more. That's definitely something that we talk about all the time. So, yeah, no, you're totally right. That's not their place to accept the apology. I think they always want to insert themselves into something that doesn't have anything to do with them when the conversation is not about them, right? I mean, let me just say, just in general about this whole thing, I hate AI. Like, I can't stand AI, honestly. I think just especially as someone who is creative, who's been in the creative arts, I really love to write. I have a creative background. I feel like you could easily hire some amazing Gen Z staff to write fun and quippy wrap-ups like they used to do with Spotify Wrapped, which has also been ruined with AI. I was so excited for Spotify Wrapped this year. I'm always excited about Spotify Wrapped, and it was horrible compared to the years before because they just added so much AI into it, and it was not creative. It wasn't as fun. So the less AI, the better, in my opinion, but especially more so when it comes to more creative aspects of things. There are some things that I think AI is good for that helps you like cut time when you're doing, you know, mathematical things, or like you need like quick,
Right.
I don't know. I'm sure that there are great things AI is for, but when it comes to creativity and writing things like this, why do we need it? You can hire so many talented people that aren't AI generated and aren't saying problematic things, right? Because they know better.
Right.
So then you don't even have to go in and be like, remove snark. You don't have to, you know, you don't have to do things like that because you've hired somebody who already has the knowledge and the nuance to not write certain things like that. And also then you have to actually look through the things that they've written and approve them yourself. Because, like, is there not a way to test these things out before putting them out in the public with AI? Like, could they not have ran through, like, a sample of people to make sure AI wasn't saying anything problematic before they, like, put it out to the general public? Just seems kind of sloppy and, like, a weird oversight. And also taking away jobs for creatives. So that's my opinion on the whole thing.
Right. Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. AI has its place, but when it comes to creative stuff, I don't like it either that much. It's fine for getting ideas. If maybe, I don't know, you want an image for something, you can use that to create what you're looking for and then take that to an artist and say, hey, can you do something like this in your style? And pay that artist to create that. Things like that I'm fine with. You know, these companies, they use it. It's mostly just so they don't have to pay somebody to do that work. And that's really the bottom line. And that's the problem.
Stuff like this happens.
Right, exactly.
Because it's like then you're gonna have to put in AI. You're gonna have to put in the AI snarky but not problematic.
Yes,
Snarky
they
but
forgot
not
to put non-problematic in their prompt.
right. So I don't know. The whole thing's ridiculous. I think it just could have been handled a much better way and just not happened at all.
Right.
Also, AI uses so much water, everybody. The amount of water AI uses is ridiculous. Just putting it out there, we're in a water crisis.
Okay, I gotta ask, how does AI use water?
You don't know
I've never
this?
heard that one before.
You haven't heard
No, I
this
haven't
before?
seen that. No, I haven't seen that one or heard that
It's
one.
like I made my coworker ask ChatGPT, how much water is this message I'm typing to you using right now? And it was 1 to 5 milliliters of water. That's per message. It's just the water that it
Okay.
takes to generate, because it takes water to, make jeans. Takes water to like make a burger. Do you know how much water it takes to make a burger?
Okay, right. Yeah. Okay.
And it's projected to use even more. It's projected, what did it say? It was like because then I Googled it. And then because Google has the AI summary at the top now.
Right.
And it said in the AI summary, it was like projected to use like trillions of gallons of water over the next like 10 years or something. Don't quote me on that. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was like a ton of water.
Okay. I was not aware of that. I never really thought about that.
Yeah, you should look it up. Look into it.
All right, I will look into that.
Google it and see what AI, because it was so funny because she was like, it's only 1 milliliter of water. I'm like, yeah, but that's per message. And you got to think, how many other people are using ChatGPT right now?
Right.
And
yeah,
then
I'm sure it adds up.
Yeah, but that's only per message. And then I was also like, this AI probably has been trained to lie to you about it.
All right, moving on from AI, and let's talk about audiobooks. What's your take on audiobooks? Is listening to an audiobook, do you consider that reading?
Oh, do I consider it reading?
Yeah, that's usually like a big thing. Some people don't consider it reading, which I think is baloney myself.
You think it's baloney?
Yeah, because you're still taking you're probably taking the same amount of time it would to read, and you're consuming that media. I mean,
right.
It's the same thing. I mean, technically, when you think about it, go ahead.
I was just saying, well, you don't want to sound ableist too, when you're like, no, it's not reading. There are people who can't read.
Exactly. Some blind people can't read. Exactly. Yeah. So it's definitely reading, I would say. I mean, even a movie is kind of reading, right? Because how does a movie start? It starts with a written script, right? So, technically, I'm not going to go as far as say when you watch a movie, you've read a book, because it's two different types of media. One is much shorter than the other. But back to audiobooks, it's reading. But
I mean, it's all consumption,
right?
So I mean, I'm kind of the sort where I'm like, I think if you watch a movie, especially if it's a really good, critically like acclaimed movie that makes you think, I don't think that's any less than reading a book.
Right.
There are also some crappy books out there.
True. So with audiobooks, do you listen at 1 times speed or 2 times speed or somewhere in between?
I personally don't listen to a lot of audiobooks. When I do, it's usually memoirs, but I actually always listen at 1 times speed. I didn't even really know that you could listen to it at a different speed until maybe like a year or two ago, when my friend was like, oh, I always listen to it at like 1.5 or 2 speed. I was like, I've never thought of doing that. I was like, I've never thought to do that. That's completely a missed opportunity for me. But I don't know. I listen to it at 1 time speed anyway, though. Partly because I don't think to do it, and then I'm not. Usually it's to kill time anyway, so I don't need to listen to it at a faster pace. But I didn't care that she read it, that she listened to it at 2 times speed. I wasn't like about it.
Right. Well, Audible, which a lot of people get their audiobooks from Audible, came out with an ad. Here, I'll play it.
The best listening speed for an audiobook is at the speed at which it was recorded.
1?
Regular speed is good for me.
I like a normal 1x listening speed. My heart rate literally spikes. I'm like, no, I want to hear people talk at a normal human rate.
I would only ever listen to an audiobook at the natural speed of 1, as it were.
1. Regular speed.
Regular speed.
Normal. I think people who go real fast are, I don't want to say psychopath, but it's giving that.
So Audible thinks you should only listen at 1 time speed. So if you look at that commercial, though, all narrators that are saying that, which I can see their point. They're narrators, that's their job, their art, their craft, they want you to listen to it how it was recorded. But this ad just ain't it, right? It's almost like they're judging people that listen to it faster, especially the woman that said you might be a psychopath if you listen to it faster than 1x speed. That's a little crossing the line there, saying something like that. What do you think?
Really condescending. I mean, the tone was just condescending in general. I don't know. Is there like a privilege to that? Are people listening in 2 times speed because they don't have the time? And so they're trying to they want to consume this media. They want to read a book. They want to listen to something, but they don't always have the time to do so. So that's why they're listening to it in 2 times speed. I don't think most of them were like celebrities. They're not crunched for time. Like I feel like a lot of working class, middle class Americans are.
Right.
So I think there's just privilege in that. I think there's not like a ton of privilege, but some privilege in being able to relish in the 1 time speed of something, maybe. So I think that's what people felt kind of upset by it, because it was very condescending. Just, it's just like celebrities telling you how to listen to something. I don't care. You're a celebrity. You got the time. Great. Good for you.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean,
call me crazy.
Personally, I only listen at 1x speed, but I'm not really trying to get through it as soon as I can. But some people I can see are trying to. When I count how many books I read, I count my audiobooks. So the faster I could get through them, the more I can read. I can see why some people do it that way, and that's perfectly fine.
I don't think we should be judging anybody about how they read or why they read or if they read or what they read.
Exactly.
Let people just read the way they want to read. Who cares? They're reading.
Yeah.
Not all that matters. And not all that matters.
It is. Let's get to what we came here for, talking about the first 6 chapters of Blood Over Brighthaven.
Woo-hoo.
So, in the first chapter, we're introduced to 4 things here, right? The Quinn people, the Blight, and 2 characters, Thamel and Kara.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about the Blight there?
The Blight is scary.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering if maybe it was just something maybe from the sun of the solar system, maybe some kind of natural thing. I mean, we don't really find out. Maybe we will eventually.
Yeah, I don't know, because it sounds like it's targeting them and feeding off of them.
Right. Yeah.
So I think
not sure what that is.
I know they talk about it later on in the chat. Skiona mentions in the later chapters that the people brought it down on themselves. So it has something to do with their religion too. Because she says, even though they brought it down on themselves, we still let them in to the city,
Right.
And it was foretold. Yeah. She says it was foretold at some point.
Okay. I must have missed that part.
Yeah.
I don't remember that part, but yeah. Okay. And then what about the whole scene of them crossing the lake, trying to get to the city?
It was so good. I thought this chapter was awesome. It was a really good way to start the book, kind of had your adrenaline going from the start.
Right. Yeah.
And also super just reminded me of the whole time I was thinking about immigration and immigrants and how hard it is for people to immigrate and all of the things that they sacrifice, including their lives. They're putting their families' lives at risk for hopefully a better, safer life. There's just such high stakes and people aren't doing it. They're not doing it because they have another option. They wouldn't do it if they didn't have another option, because it sounds like they're escaping from this really bleak winter, it's cold, snow, can't survive climate in order to get into this big city that's protected by the winter and by whatever the blight is. So I just thought about people immigrating into other countries, refugees, and how it's not just a choice that people make lightly, because there's a lot of risk to take. And then to get to this other place, if they make it, because most of them didn't make it, if they make it, then they're immediately put to work. They immediately have to prove that they can work or to be a part of the society.
And in fact, they wanted to throw Kara back outside of the city because she probably couldn't work.
Right, because she was a kid. So what value did she have?
Right, exactly.
Which is what I feel like a lot of people face today when they immigrate.
Right.
So that's all I could think about the whole time. I was like, wow, what a really great way to portray how desperate people are, and also how they literally go from this traumatic event of leaving their home and leaving not only, they're leaving the bad things behind, but they're also leaving their culture behind.
Right.
In order to cross into this new world, in order to be safe. And they're traumatized from it. And then to immediately have to work, to immediately have to keep going. and not be able to process. I mean, he just lost his entire family, his entire clan. And instead of having time to like sit and grieve that, no, you have to work or you're going back out there.
Yeah, it was definitely an exciting opening to the book for sure. So my next question is, when will we see more of Kara? Hopefully soon. We'll see what's going on with her. I don't really remember if they said how old she was.
Maybe 4. Maybe they said she was like 4 or something.
Okay, was it that young? Okay, I couldn't
She was
remember.
young.
I don't.
6 or younger.
Okay. And then what happened with her, she was almost taken by the blight, right? It said it burned a crescent across her left eye. So kind of like Harry Potter and his scar, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's been touched by the blight and now she has a mark. Is this a mark for greatness later on?
Well, that's an interesting, because now I'm just thinking too, because remember I said, there's later on in these chapters where Skiona does mention like, oh, the blight was foretold. I wonder if the blight touching somebody was foretold in their religion. So it'd be interesting if that does pop up at some time. I also don't know how many years have gone by. It doesn't really say, does it? It didn't say how many years later, did it?
Right, that's true. We don't know the time difference between chapter 1 and chapter 2. I just thought it was going to be not too much time in between them.
It sounds to me like Thamel and Skiona are around the same age, so it's probably been like 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, it could be. Speaking of Siona, is it Siona or Siona? How do you pronounce it? I didn't listen to the audiobook, so I don't know how the narrator pronounces it.
Oh, I don't know either. I was saying Siona. Siona? Skyona?
I was saying Siona. I was thinking Siona. Like science, S-C-I, Siona.
I don't know. Uh-oh.
Anyway, I'm going to say it the way I say it. You can say it the way you say it. I think we'll know who we're talking about. So Siona and the city of Tyrin comes in the second chapter. And Tyrin reminds me of a D&D setting called Eberron. So it's like magic meets the Industrial Revolution. You have guns, trains, and other, more modern things that uses magic to make it function. Mm-hmm. What did you think about the way magic is used there in the city?
I mean, I think it's really cool. I love that. You mentioned this later. It did remind me a lot of Babel by R.F. Wang, how they use magic in that book and how it powers, it's like electricity, basically, how it powers everything and how important it is, which I always thought was really cool in Babel. And I think it's really cool in this book too. And I like how they do it with the spellograph. The spellograph is so cool. And I like how in the beginning of the book,
a diagram of it,
and tells you like everything that it does. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
Like a typewriter type of thing. So I think I always find it fascinating in like fantasy books where they do have these magic systems that really are used as power, and it's important to cultivate it and train people to use it. And I like how they have different, because there's like mappers, and then there's people who, what was the other one?
Don't remember.
I don't remember either.
Yeah, there's mapping, which is Siona's specialty, right? Manual mapping. But we'll get into that here in a moment. Going back to chapter 2, we're introduced also to the misogyny of the world, which is quite a bit, right? I wrote down here, holy misogyny, Batman. So you have this whole sector of high mages. There's 100 high mages, and I think, was it 10 or 12 of them are archmages? But there are no women, and women can only attempt to become a high mage and take the exam. Every 10 years, one woman is allowed to do that.
Right.
And then, of course, in that exam, certain people get special treatment in the exam, like old magic, old money, where, that's kind of an allusion to Ivy League schools here in our world, right?
Yes.
If you're old money and, you're a legacy, your dad, your grandfather went to Harvard, then your chances of getting into Harvard are probably pretty high.
Yeah, a lot of Nepo babies.
Yeah, Nepo babies, right.
Nepo babies.
You see that during the exam, right? What's the guy's name? Mordra, right. He's one of the ones, there's only 2 openings during this exam, and he's one of the ones that gets chosen, even though it seemed to be some of the other people taking the exam were probably better at magic than he was.
Yeah, he was terrible. According to Siona, he was terrible.
Right.
But his daddy's an archmage, so
right.
There you go. Nepo baby. nepotism at its finest.
Right.
Yeah. Lots of misogyny. And I feel like too, if I remember correctly, it wasn't even that women are only like allowed to attempt the high mage every 10 years. It's more so they just like women always apply to it, but they just let them randomly. They just like throw out just to say that they're doing it every 10 years.
Right.
Is what it's like to me. So it's not even like they're allowed. It's just like, it sounds like women apply, but they don't even look at them. Just every once in a while, they're like, let me just throw them a bone so it looks like we're doing what we're supposed to do, which is crazy. I liked too, because I was thinking about this at first, and then she did end up talking about it later, how some of the women who did do the test and who failed did have work published under their husbands, because that was the only way that they could get published. One of them, she says, went quote unquote crazy, and her husband sent her to an institution. She ended up hanging herself. And I was glad that the author like threw that in, because that's what I was thinking. I was like, I bet in this world, it sounds like there probably are women, because they let them practice magic up until a certain point, and then they end up being like teachers and things like that, don't get to go to high mage. So because there are women practicing magic, I was like, surely there are women that have been qualified in order to be a high mage, but didn't pass for whatever teeny tiny minor reason, but we're qualified. And then so we're still doing the work, because if you're that qualified and it's that something that you're that passionate about, you're going to keep continuing to do it in whatever way you can. So I like that the author put that in there, because that definitely happens like in our society now, or it like has happened in the past, like big time.
Yeah.
Women's work taken credit by men.
Yeah, and I was looking into that, and one of the ones from the literary world that popped out was Zelda Fitzgerald, because many people believe that F. Scott Fitzgerald, who wrote The Great Gatsby, he incorporated his wife's diaries into his novels without giving her proper recognition.
Right.
And I'm sure there's plenty of other examples out there, but that was just one I found from the literary world.
But also science, math. I mean, and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Every field you can imagine, a woman has been behind something and you didn't realize, because she had to put the credit under whatever man she was attached to. So I like that that was mentioned, because I really was thinking like, I bet there's some women in this world who were totally qualified, that probably put in a lot of work and effort into, because it is such a huge system. I mean, the whole world operates on this magic system. So you need a ton of people working at all times.
But it comes back to the legacy thing too. If there's only other exams, there may have only been one opening. And if they had one guy whose daddy was a archmage already, well, obviously he's going to get in over the woman.
Right. It's interesting too, because in their political system, they have a woman who is in office and is currently running for re-election.
Right.
We forget her name,
I don't remember what her name is.
Yeah, we don't remember her name. I know that they talked a lot. They mentioned at some point too, like the reasons why Siona got, even let into being a high mage was because maybe they were trying to play political favor for this woman who was, running for re-election. And it's interesting to me that this society is so misogynistic, and yet there's something going on over here with this woman who's in office, and we need her, and we need to play favor with her. So I'm very intrigued by her character, and when she's going to pop up in all of this, I want to know what's going on with this woman in office. It's very interesting to me, the misogynistic world.
Right, because if the world is so misogynistic, how is this woman a politician? And why are they trying to please her by taking in a woman as a high mage for the first time ever? Let's talk about Siona here. So she was an orphan living with her Aunt Winnie and cousin Alba. Both of those are kind of flat characters. Like Alba was with her at the exam, and I think Alba was just there so that they could have an explanation, where Siona is kind of explaining to her how all the magic works, right? So Alba is kind of like a flat character there just to drive dialogue and explain the world.
I think she's also a good comparison to how women, her and Aunt Winnie, I think, good comparisons into how women should be in this society.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So Siona's been studying magic her entire life. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I just was going to say, I think it's a good contrast in showing how Siona is doing a lot to break barriers, and how different she is, and how society expects her to be, because society expects her to be more like Alba and Aunt Winnie.
Right.
So I was just they're a good comparison to what we should expect from her as a woman in this society versus what she is.
Yeah, that makes sense too. Yeah. So Siona has been studying magic her entire life. Mm-hmm. And of course, she's had to work above and beyond just to be noticed.
Which is so true in the real world. Any marginalized person in society has to make their work everything. They have to work so hard just to be taken any kind of serious. Unlike any of her mediocre male counterparts, which we were talking about with Mordra, who did terrible in his exam, but not only because he's a Nepo baby, but also because he's just a man in general. He doesn't have to work as hard because he's already got one step up by being a man versus, and you can tell in the tests that they give her, they're just outrageous. Like the tests they give her, they didn't give to anybody else. The huge cauldron that she had to do, nobody else had something like that. Nobody else had to take from the other world, the other realm, in order to do that. And that wasn't even her specialty. But she had to know how to do that. She had to do it well, and it just and then that's just how it is for women in any marginalized person in our society too. Like you just have to work so hard, and it's not fair. But she does it, and she does it well, and she knows it.
Yes, she definitely knows she's good. She does.
But she has to, and she has to know it, because if she doesn't know it,
right,
then nobody else is going to take her seriously.
Right,
She's not going to get what she wants.
So she's been preparing to take this exam to become a high mage, her entire life pretty much. And now when she does take the exam, like you said, they had this cauldron, which the first time she tries it, because she doesn't know the exact weight of the cauldron and she overestimates how much it weighs, she's supposed to levitate it, and she lifts it up and it literally breaks the glass ceiling, right? So it goes through the ceiling, breaking the ceiling. She does it again, even though the mage, I can't remember his name, that gave her this part of the test was yelling at her, telling her to stop. She does it anyway, and she gets it right. I think it was kind of like some symbolism there of her breaking the ceiling, because, women breaking the glass ceiling kind of thing, which is actually alluded to later on by her mentor, Archmage Dareth Bringham. What a name.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what did you think about the exam there? I know you talked a little bit about it, how it was so hard for her compared to the other ones.
Yeah, just completely unfair. And the one guy that made her do that, what an asshole. The Archmage, he just really is like, I do not want a woman here.
Right. Exactly. That was his whole thing. He was just trying to show her up as best he could.
But then also getting upset with her when she does have the audacity to be arrogant. When she is like, no, I can do this, let me do it. And then being upset that she can do it. It's like, you wanted to see if she could do this thing. She did more than you expected, and then was able to fix her mistake right then and there in that moment.
Yeah, but that's just it. He didn't want to see her do that. He wanted her to fail.
Well, right. Well, and that's why it's upsetting, because she does have this arrogance. But so would any other man. A man would have that kind of arrogance, and if a man had been like, no, I'm going to fix my mistake, he would have let her. So for me, there's always this idea that it's okay for a man to be arrogant, but it's not okay for a woman to be arrogant. And that's kind of where, yes, she is very arrogant. That's not always the best quality to have as a person, but she's forced to be. And then when they do force her into it, because I feel like she was forced into being a bitch, and then they got mad at her when she was.
Right.
That's how that felt for me. I was like, no, you're not going to make her do this crazy thing. And then she does it, can fix it right then and there. And then you're going to get mad at her and tell her she can't do it anymore. That's crazy. Yeah. So yeah, just super unfair. But I was like, yes, pop off, queen. You show those men. I was like, because I would have done the same thing. I would have been like, no, I got it now. I got it now. And then to do it.
Yeah,
was
I could see you being like that. Yeah, for sure.
Like, she's a badass. She's a badass. Good for her. It's like, stand your ground. Because that's what her mentor told her to do too. Her mentor was like, no, you do what you have to do in order to get them to listen to you and pay attention to you.
Right. Speaking of her mentor, let's talk about him, Archmage Dareth Bringham.
Yes, I'm so interested in what's going to happen with him.
Yeah, he seems to take great pride in her, but does he have any ulterior motives? Maybe we'll find out later. Maybe he is the one who maybe is trying to win favor with that politician or something like that. Maybe he's the bad guy. We don't know. We're only 6 chapters in.
I'm super curious to find out if he's like the evil mentor with the ulterior motives. Because, there's the mentor tropes. Right. And I feel like they're either like they have the ulterior motive, or they end up sacrificing themselves for the hero at some point in the end. Right. So it'll be interesting to find out if he's...
Kind of like Snape, right?
like a Snape Dumbledore type, or like the one that's gonna turn and be like, actually, no, the bad guy the entire time.
Yeah.
And then the main character, the hero, is like, my whole life has been a lie, right? So it'll be interesting to
Right.
know what journey it's gonna follow.
Right. And we really only had a couple run-ins with him, the one there at the exam, and then later on gets her lab. So I'm sure we'll see more of him if there's a little more to play out there. So let's talk about the magic system now, which we have talked about quite a bit already. But we get some explanation on the magic system during the exam, and then later on we get even more when she gets her lab and stuff. But the thing that stood out to me during the exam was the spell where she made the bomb. So it was almost like she was writing code. It was like she was setting variables, right? She was saying the device is called the device. So anytime later when she mentions device, it knows what she's talking about. And then she used like an if-then statement, which basically in coding, that's a flow statement that executes a section of code if a certain condition is considered true. So it's like if condition 1 is met, the device is 15 feet high, then action 1 and action 2 will execute. So I thought that was really cool, especially considering that, I am a data engineer,
Right.
do some coding here and there.
I know that.
So that was kind of cool to me.
Yeah.
You don't know how to code, so
I don't know how to code. I was reading that in your thing, and I was like, oh, that's so interesting. I love that for you, because I didn't know when to come. I just thought it was cool how she did it. But then even part of me kind of was like, oh, blah blah blah, in my brain while I was reading that part.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that's where that comes from. And then spells can be written on the device called a spellograph, which we talked about already. And there's a diagram at the beginning of the book that shows you what a spellograph is. But from there, they can immediately go into action like they were during the exam. Well, also part of the part where she built the bomb, you can see that it can also be, the magic can be stored in an item. And this is where we're talking about where it kind of reminds us of the magic system from Fable by R.F. Kuang, where in that magic system, they translated words onto silver bars as match pairs. So it was 2 different languages. They would have 2 bars there was 1 bar and was on the front and the back, where it was 1 language, and then on the back it was a second language. And when they were read, the magic was what was lost in the translation between those 2 words, which is really cool. I love the magic system in Babel. It's really cool. But anyway, when they pronounce those 2 words, whatever's lost between the translation, because they're 2 different languages, it makes that magic come alive and does what it does. And those bars can be affixed to items or devices to get whatever effect it's trying to get.
Yeah, super cool. All I could think about was Babel the whole time I was reading it. I was like, this is very similar to that, which I also thought was cool, Babel. And I like these magic systems and how they work and how they're like fuel to us in the, in our society. And how they're having to cultivate it and find it. Because then she talks about when she's like explaining it to Thamel, how you have to go to different sectors of the other realm, like different points, in order to get the energy and use it, which I thought was super cool. And how that like ties into how like their energy sources also ties into their religion, which is really interesting. How it's like they've kind of made that energy source into their religion. She's very religious, we can tell, because she's very like a devout Leonite, she says. So it's interesting how their magical system, unlike in Babel, is tied to also their religion, which is like a really important part of their society.
Right. And the magic itself comes from something called the other realm. It's like, I guess it's like a portal, like on the spellograph, a portal like thing opens, I guess, where they can see. It's kind of like black and white, I think. And they call it mapping, and they map to a specific source of power. And, that's one of her specialties, is manually mapping to get that power. Yeah, it's definitely cool, but also very hard to understand, I guess, because that's when the math gets involved, where they're trying to figure out coordinates and things like that.
But it's so cool, though, because he even says, too, Thamel's like, you just know all of this off the top of your head? She's like, yeah, I do. She has a whole map of the other realm in her head that other people who are just like don't. Because he was like throwing out coordinates, and she's like, well, not that one, because there's no energy there. Or not that one, because we're not allowed to pull from that one, which is also a fun little thing we might learn about later. Like, why are there sections that we can't pull from? Because then they go into the like guy who used the dark magic, and pulling from that is dark magic. But the reason why is because of their religion, because their religion says that they can't pull from this.
Yeah, I think it went back to the religion.
Yeah, but we don't really know why it's dark magic. So there's lots of background story of the religion that I'm super interested to find out about.
Right.
Hmm.
And then there was also mention of 2 large towers on either side of the city that holds energy channeled from the reserve siphoning zones. So I wasn't too sure about that. Didn't really understand that part, but maybe that will come into play later.
Yeah.
Did you get anything out of that?
No, just like, again, other places where they're allowed to pull from and not pull from, and like why. And
Right.
I think they'll, once we start getting into whatever backstory we need for the religion aspect of it, I think we'll figure that out, which I'm sure that has something to do with what's going to drive the story, right? There's going to be something, politics, religion, whatever. There's a lot of things that it's also crazy because she has such an analytical mind, and she is very devoutly religious. It sounds like that she's not questioning things. She's just so focused on on her path and becoming a mapper and a high mage as a woman. And she's not really questioning why are we not allowed to pull from this? She's very devout. She's very we're just not allowed to, so we don't. Moving on. And it's like, girl, there's probably some kind of corruption going on. Where's the corruption?
All right. So she's a high mage now. She gets her very own lab for herself where she gets put on a project. But when she first goes to the magic center and she's looking for her new lab, she kind of says something I didn't really like. And this showed kind of some arrogance from her, which we've already talked about. She has. And she said she was looking around. No one was there. She didn't know where her lab was located. So she saw a janitor who was busy working. And then it says she peered around for a real person. Like the janitor's not a real person. So yeah, that's a little arrogant there, I think, right?
Yeah, you were saying that's arrogant, and I think it does show arrogance, but I was thinking it showed more of how their society looks down upon the Quinn.
Right. So I guess I didn't say that. Yeah, he was Quinn. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think I would assume that most of their working class is going to be Quinn. That's just an assumption I'm making based off of the first chapter and based off of Thamel being the janitor. So to me, it sounds like most of their working class is Quinn. And so I think you can tell their society doesn't really, they look down on them. They're just they're refugees, basically. So I think it was more of that's just how their society, I think everybody would have just peered around and thought that the janitor wasn't a real person, not just her, is what I think. I think all of them would.
And probably so, because like you said, he was Quinn and we saw how they were treated when they first got there. So,
well, because even when the boys start messing with her and tell her, oh, she should take Tommy, they're like, don't do that. That's so mean. Because I think in their brain, they're like, he's not even a real person. He's not even
right. Yeah.
So I think the whole society just looks down on the Quinn and as not real people. Because as I mentioned, I think earlier, there's one point where she says that the blight was foretold and that they brought it upon themselves and we let them in anyway because we're told to.
Dude, so the whole society looks down on the Quinn, pretty much.
Yeah.
And
so I think there's a lot of...
That's why she said that.
Yeah. Not to say that she isn't arrogant. I will give you she's arrogant. I think we still have to just be quick to be like, okay, I think she just was forced to be arrogant because she's a woman in a society where she has to prove herself so much. And I think it does show the social structures between the tyrannies and the Quinn.
So she finds her lab. She meets up with the other high mages, speaking of the boys, and the misogyny gets ramped up to 11.
Yep.
Right. So she meets high mage Cleon Renthorn, who was also a mentee of her mentor, Archmage, what's his name? Brigham Young.
Right.
And she doesn't have an assistant. So he says that she can take the janitor, Tommy, as her assistant, trying to insult her. And it's fitting that the chapter of this title is just a joke, right? It's one of the most common gaslighting phrases invented by man, because that's what they end up saying. Oh, it's just a joke, where they're joking with her to take Tommy as her assistant.
Right.
But she ends up actually taking Tommy, who ends up being Thamel, as her assistant that we saw, it's Thamel from the first chapter.
Right. Yeah, that was a good catch on I didn't even catch that, the just a joke chapter. So that was a good catch on your part. But yeah. So super fitting. Good catch, Dad. Yeah, and just those boys, so annoying. Both of them Nepo babies. High Mage Cleon Renthorn, his dad is also an Archmage.
Right. Yeah, he's a huge douchebag.
Yeah.
And I said he probably has the hots for Siona,
Well, I mean,
probably.
I'm sure most of them do.
So that brings us to Tamil. So I wanted to ask you this. Do you ever do any casting when you're reading a book? Like picture a famous actor for a character?
You know,
Do
I
you ever
actually
do
do
that?
not. I
You
like
don't do
make
that?
them up.
I do it sometimes. I don't do it for every character, but for some reason, Tamil, I just picture Walton Goggins. I don't know
Which,
why.
and I didn't know who that was, so I went and looked him up. And I think you're crazy for that, but
You think I'm crazy for that?
yeah, because Thamel's like 27 or something. He's young.
Yeah, it wasn't really the age thing. It's more of just the way he is. Like, so Walton Goggins plays a lot of like Western stuff. And then I guess the beginning, the first chapter where Tomo's like a scout, with the bow and arrow and stuff. And then just the way he talks, I guess, kind of reminds me of. But anyway, that's who I think of when I read Tomo.
All right.
I don't know. It's probably weird that I do that. I do that with some characters, not all of them.
That's
it's like
weird.
in Dungeon Crawler Carl, there's actually a cat that can talk, right? And it's a female cat, but I always picture whenever I read her dialogue in my brain, it always sounded like Brian the dog from Family Guy, and I don't know why. It's weird.
No, I don't think it's weird that you picture. So I think most people do that. I think I'm weird
Really?
for not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
Maybe you're the weird one then.
I think I am the weird one because I always picture I always make people up in my head. Honestly, I make them up in my head. So I think I'm the weird one actually.
Okay.
Drop a
I'll go with
comment. Let us know. What do you do? Do you cast in your head or do you make them up?
Yeah. Do you cast characters in your head, or do you make it up? Just make up
Which
someone,
one of
or
us
just
is here?
nothing?
Dad or daughter?
Yeah. So Tamil and Siona. Siona seems to have the hots for Tamil, but doesn't know it yet. She got a little bit drunk there, right? She got a little too familiar with him, I think. Also, it has to do with the way he treats her, right? He's the only one in the building other than her mentor that treats her with any kind of respect or kindness. Maybe people in our world, in the so-called loneliness epidemic, if they would treat women with respect and kindness, maybe things would go a little better for them. I don't know. I don't know anything.
Who's
But yeah, she got a little handsy with him.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about their relationship?
Well, I think that they just have a lot in common. I think that they both have had a lot to prove in this society. I think that he's had to be able to work in order to survive and work hard and well. And she's had to constantly be focused and working hard and well to achieve the things that others can easily achieve in her society. I think this is the first time she's ever met anybody who feels like they get it. I think going back to Aunt Winnie and Alba, those are portrayals of how women are in this society. And she couldn't really relate to them because she had a higher goal, a higher focus. She wanted something that women don't traditionally want in that society. So I think this is the first time, and she even says this is the first time I've ever made a friend. She's doesn't want to do anything because he feels like a friend. So, and I think that's kind of strange for her because he is Quen and she's not supposed to be looking at him like that, thinking about him like that. So even though they might not know it yet because of societal norms and the things that she was taught and the way that Thalma has been treated by the tyrannies, so I don't think she's ever had someone she can relate to her in that way, which is why it's been hard for her to form connection with others. And so I think this connection with Thamel that she has is going to be really special because she sees something in him that she also knows in herself that she's never found before with anybody else. So it's yeah, okay, fine.
She'll lose some of her arrogance towards the Quinn.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Of Tamil, because she kind of, she was surprised that he kind of understood what she was talking about when she was explaining the magic to him and how it worked, and with the other world and the coordinates and the mapping.
And even though she's Tyrannese and he's Quen, they've both been marginalized in some way. And I don't think she expected that. I don't think she realized oh, we have things in common, and she's never found that before. I don't think. So yeah, I think that's special for her, and I think it'll be fun to see their relationship unfold. If it turns romantic or not, I think it's nice for her to just have a friend.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to turn romantic.
Yeah, especially feeling so isolated, in her own world, and him being pretty isolated too because he lost all of his culture and his family. So I think they just have a lot in common that they didn't expect to have in common. I don't think he expected to have a lot in common with her either. I don't think he expected to feel the way that he was going to feel with her either. I think he very much was like, wait a minute, like she doesn't get it, but she gets it. And same with her. Like he doesn't get it, but he gets it.
Right. All right. And then the last thing we want to talk about is the religion, like you said. So there's two sects of religions. There's the Leonites and the Teresian. So we get a little glimpse into these because each chapter starts with a blurb from one of their respective scriptures. You're getting a little glimpse into the religion there. And then one of the main things that differentiates the two sects is the Leonites say that God opened the other realm to the founding mages of Tyrion, where Teresians, it's hard to say. Teresians say God created the other realm for the founding mages. So that's interesting. And like you said, I do want to see more of how that works, but I'm still not sure what all to make of it. What about you?
Yeah, I don't know what to make of it either, but I'm super interested in it. I think that because like I said, I feel like it's interesting to me that their source of power is tied into their religion. So, usually I feel like those two things are separate in a lot of in worlds, and in this one they're so tied together. And it's interesting that there are two different ideas of it, and it makes sense that she's of the idea that God opened the other realm. But it's interesting too because she said most of the high mages, though, most of the people who practice are Teresians, and that God created the other realm for the founding mages, because that's what she says. She asked him, like, that's how they explain it. She's like, what do you know about the magic system? He's like, just what they've preached on the radio. And then she asks, okay, like, well, what are they preaching? And he says, and she's like, okay, so the Leonites then. And then it's easy for her to explain because that's what she believes. But she says that people practicing in like high mages aren't normally Leonites. They're Teresians, whatever. Right. So I'm very intrigued just because it is also tied in together, and like what is the truth, and like I'm excited to learn more about Leon because who the hell was he, and like why is he so important, and that he was also doing all of this stuff with magic but also is a prophet at the same time. Great. I don't know. I'm super excited to find out, and like what secrets are behind that, because there's got to be a lot of crap that they're not telling people, like things that have been made up. A lot of like, what are we going to find out that's going to really, what are the stakes here, because I feel like it's all tied into that. So I'm very excited about this. I think that's the coolest part of this book so far, is like how religion ties into their magical sourcing. All
right. Well, we'd love to hear your thoughts on the first 6 chapters of Blood Over Bright Haven by M.L. Wang. If you're on YouTube, drop a comment below. You can also connect with us on Blue Sky at D&D Reads Pod. If you prefer TikTok or Instagram, we're over there too. You can find us at Dad and Daughter Reads. Links are in the show notes.
Thanks for tuning in. Here's a quick look at what's coming up. Once we finish Blood Over Bright Haven, we'll dive into James by Percival Everett. After that, it's your turn to help choose our next book. So join the discussion and cast your vote on Blue Sky, Discord, or Fable. You can find the links in the show notes. Don't forget to join us next week as we explore chapters 7 through 12 of Blood Over Bright Haven. And thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time.
Our intro music is Upbeat Funk, performed by Mikhail Smusev. And our outro music is Lo-Fi Chill medium version, performed by Bodan Kuzmin. You can find both tracks on pixabay.com. Thanks for joining us, family, and we'll see you next week.